What's up, everybody? This is Robbie Yeager for MCSC Network, and you're watching another episode of the Rob Report. And today, we got to talk about the bullshit that the DNC just pulled to keep Tulsi Gabbard off the debate stage. Uh, and make no mistake about it, that was exactly what they did. Last night, the Democratic Party changed the rules for the debate qualification threshold for no other reason than to keep Tulsi Gabbard off that stage. Um, because if that's not what their intent was, then they would have left the rules alone because there was no other reason to change them. After Tulsi Gabbard got those two delegates from American Samoa, that put her on the stage, by the rules. And the only way that she wasn't going to get on that stage was if the Democratic Party decided to change those rules. And that is exactly what they did because they have a vendetta against Tulsi Gabbard it goes back even farther than when she announced her candidacy last year. It goes all the way back to 2016 when she stepped down as the vice chair and very publicly endorsed Bernie Sanders. That didn't sit well with the Democratic leadership, considering that they had already way in advance anointed Hillary Clinton as a candidate, as the DNC email leak and the Podesta email leaks would show. Um, you know, and it was a very corrupt process, and it's a process that they're still continuing to this day, albeit in a different fashion. And we'll touch on that a little bit. Um, but Tulsi Gabbard, for no other reason than this, that they don't like her because she's a threat. Her ideas are a threat. I don't think it necessarily would have had to be Tulsi. It could have been anybody on that stage talking about the ideas that she's talking about regime change wars, and talking about how impeachment and Russiagate is a giant hoax. And she's exactly right on all of it. Impeachment was a giant failure. We are perpetuating regime change wars throughout the world, and we have for modern history. I mean, even more than that. I mean, you can just look in the history book, and especially ever since the development of our intelligence agencies, namely the CIA. Anytime there's a military coup around the world, and we're bringing democracy, quote unquote, to other areas of the world, the U.S. government almost always has a part to play into that. It means we're sending our troops to die. We're sending other people's troops to die for a political pawn in the game, right? I mean, this isn't anything new, but the danger comes whenever you have a very prominent national politician getting up on stage in front of millions and millions of people, telling these people that's exactly what's happening. It's a very dangerous thing for the intelligence community to lose their foothold on the mind manipulation that they constantly carry out on our own citizens to make you feel like everything that we do overseas is for the good of the country, when really it's just in the best interest of the military industrial complex and big oil industries, the international drug trade. You know, this is all very, very important stuff that I feel like the citizens have been brainwashed in believing that the CIA and agencies like them, like the NSA, are all, just out here doing good. But what we're really doing is just a softer form of imperialism. And whenever you have a politician, like I said, get up on a debate stage in front of millions and millions of people and start talking about these ideas openly, it scares the hell out of the people that pay the DNC's bills. Now, who pays their bills? Well, obviously a boatload of billionaires, but there's also corporations like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, all the big military defense contractors. They give hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Democratic Party as a whole, the DCCC, the DSCC, all of these things. I mean, you can pull them up on the FEC website right now and look at, just the zeros that go behind these numbers. I mean, they're funding the Democratic Party. When you're a party that's funded by the war machine, what do you think is going to be in your best interest? Keep the candidate that is anti-war, anti-regime change war, anti-imperialism. You want her on the stage, ruining your marketing? I don't think so, right? So, this is just another thing. They've taken every trick in the book they can to disparage Tulsi Gabbard, to diminish her accomplishments, to all the legislative acts that she has put forth in Congress, the Stop Arming Terrorists Acts, the safe the Better Elections Act. I can't remember exactly what that's called. Forgive me. It was an election integrity law that focused around paper ballots. And the Democratic establishment was all talking about how worried they are about people hacking in our elections, yet they continuously overlook the fact that legislation has been introduced to minimize that by going back to paper ballots. Tulsi Gabbard did that. You know, they don't want these really issues to be solved. They want these issues to continue to be issues so they can continue to talk about them on the media. And, you know, it's a double-edged sword. So they can continue to get votes off of fear-mongering based off those issues, but they can also use those issues as a political football to continue to slander on President Trump. You know, and like I said, there's plenty of things you can go at Trump about. I mean, this is not like he's a perfect guy. He's actually a pretty piece of shit. But the fact of the matter is that Russiagate and Ukrainegate and impeachment were total bullshit. And the media has been feeding you this shit for years now. And it just goes to show you that the brainwashing actually does work. So, you know, this is a very corrupt game that they're playing. And it's really gross, honestly. I mean, from the second that she hit the airwaves, right? She blew up at first. And people were like, before I get into this, there's lots of people trying to tell me that, oh, well, she's not getting the vote. She doesn't have the support. I know there's a reason for that. And it has nothing to do with her platform. It has everything to do with the fact that ever since she got up on that stage the first time, or the second time. First time she destroyed Tim Ryan, got him pretty much out of the race, even though he was never really in it. Second time, Kamala Harris, she's a ghost. You want to know why? Because Tulsi Gabbard did that, right? She just absolutely crushed her in that debate. And, you know, the trend would have continued, but after that, the establishment definitely saw, okay, she's getting way too much momentum. She's the most searched candidate after every debate stage she's on. And it scared the hell out of the DNC. They don't want her ideas going mainstream. They've already got a big enough problem with Bernie Sanders' ideas finally making it into the national conversation. Like, we're actually starting to talk about Medicare for all in 2016. Now it is the conversation. There is no other conversation, really, when it comes to healthcare. It's not private insurance versus Obamacare. Now it's basically Obamacare versus Medicare for all. He's pushed that conversation left when it comes to healthcare, and he should be commended for that. Tulsi Gabbard was going to do the same thing for war. They can't have that, as I've said. I mean, that's like their biggest donor right there, right? The military-industrial complex doesn't just fund the Democrats, it funds the Republicans too. It funds all of our government. Our government would not function properly if we weren't going through these regime change wars in the Middle East and, you know, South Asia. So, and even in Africa. I mean, we're heavily involved in military operations in Africa, and we've been there. Like, we've got a forgotten war. We've been in Somalia for over a decade. Nobody ever talks about that. So you can't have these, if you're the Democratic Party, you can't have these ideas going mainstream, right? It just screws everything up, and it scares the hell out of you that you actually have a strong woman of color on national television, actually, you know, not buying into the garbage that the DNC has been pushing on us for the last 4 years, and even longer than that, really. I mean, come on, this is how politics has always been. But it just goes to show you two things. That one, her ideas threaten the status quo of the DNC, and the fact that the DNC is rigging the hell out of this primary, and they have been from the very beginning. It's not even close. I mean, you saw what they did pre-Super Tuesday. You know, as I mentioned before, Buttigieg should not have dropped out. The only reason he dropped out was because the DNC got to him and pressured him into doing so. That shouldn't have happened. That's not a natural progression of the democratic process. It's not a natural progression of, I've got momentum going into Super Tuesday. I'm one of only 3 Democrats that has double-digit delegates. I could potentially be viable in several different states, but I'm getting pressure from my party to prematurely drop out just to either A, help one candidate, or B, hurt the other. I mean, this is a straight up rigged primary. I mean, everything about it stinks. I mean, we saw reports even after Super Tuesday, after Bloomberg took a pretty hefty percentage of what would presumably be Joe Biden's votes. You saw reports that he was being intensely pressured by the DNC to drop out of the race. Now, why would you do that? Well, to obviously elevate Joe Biden, who is the Manchurian candidate that you want to be the nominee, because it can't be Sanders, right? I mean, they've made it perfectly clear. People, this is what I'm trying to tell you. All right, the Democratic Party is Democratic in name only. They have no interest in letting the actual rule of democracy take its natural course. Okay, they want to manipulate it as much as possible, and you can see that from the committees that they appoint. I mean, they put John fucking Podesta back on the Rules Committee. I mean, and you can see that from the way that they do these backroom deals to keep people out of the race, to make sure that anything to keep Bernie Sanders from winning this nomination, anything to keep Tulsi Gabbard from being in public speaking her mind with these dangerous ideas that threaten everything that the Democratic Party stands for, which is profiting off of war. Okay? And you would notice that, okay, we're going to impeach Donald Trump for Ukraine Gate or whatever the hell bullshit reason that they come up with. But in the meantime, while we're going through this, you know what Democratic leadership is doing? They're passing all of his policies. They're passing his war budget. They're passing his trade agreements. If he's such a piece of shit, why are you passing all of his legislation? You want to know why? Because Democrats and Republicans get along just fine when we're talking about which country full of brown people to drop bombs on. Tulsi Gabbard challenges that. Tulsi Gabbard has been erased from this entire equation by her own party. I want you to think about that. The Democratic Party erased, and they erased her straight up from the entire candidacy, from the entire election, from the entire primary. They have gone out of their way, and the media has aided them in this endeavor. By basically every time they show a list of candidates still running, they erase Tulsi Gabbard. Every time they talk about women in the race, they erase Tulsi Gabbard. Every time they talk about people of color or ethnic minorities in the race, they erase Tulsi Gabbard. It's shameful. It's disgusting. And the fact of the matter is that we cannot continue to allow them to do this, right? Because right now it's Tulsi Gabbard. Next year it'll be somebody else. This isn't the way that elections are supposed to be run. And I can guarantee you, if Tulsi Gabbard would have had a fair shake at this whole deal and still gotten the same results that she has now, then things would be going differently, I believe. I mean, I don't have a direct line to the campaign, but you'd have to believe if she thought that she was getting a fair shake at the democratic process and things just weren't working out, then yeah, maybe she might not even be in the race right now. But that's not how things went. I mean, she has had to deal with smear after smear after smear, hit piece after hit piece for over a year now. For what? For daring to have her own opinion and to have her own voice and to speak her mind when it comes to issues that, actually take some kind of nuance and critical thinking to get through to the best solution for a lot of these problems. I mean, impeachment was bullshit, guys. If you wanted to impeach Donald Trump, you could go. I would go forward with different things. Like you could have gone the Yemeni slaughter, like the whole situation in Yemen. That's rife with material, right? But you guys want to keep harking on this stupidity about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, this is just, and speaking of Russia, what happens whenever you dare to cast any kind of doubt on the validity of the claims made by our almost clandestine intelligence community that get away with everything unchecked? They overthrowing governments, for fuck's sake. But we're not allowed to say that because that's a Russian talking point. That's a Putin propaganda. Like, do you know how fucking asinine that sounds? You know how stupid you are for saying that? You know how stupid you are for believing that? I mean, come on, people. Look at what's happening in front of your own eyes, right? Tulsi Gabbard's message is that of change, actual change, not Obama change, right? Not just enough change to get you to vote for you. Like, change as in stuff that would fundamentally alter the way that our government does business internationally, right? You guys want to be a force for good in the world? Well, stopping manipulating other countries' elections and stopping the, covert overthrow of governments around the world, that's one way that you do that. All right. Stop intervening in every little skirmish that happens in the Middle East. Stop selling weapons to terrorists. Oh yeah, wait. That's another fucking bill that she introduced into Congress. Hey, let's stop selling weapons to the people that are going to use them to commit mass murder. Like, we actually have, it's 2020. We actually have to have somebody tell us that this is a bad thing. Like, what the fuck? I mean, honestly, this shit pisses me off because as a citizen who wants to feel like his vote matters, even though I know better, look, this is the fight. This is the hill we're dying on, right? If we don't have fair and democratic elections, then what do we have, right? We have nothing. I mean, really, we've got two parties picking who's going to be their nominee. We don't get to pick who the nominee is. Because if we did, things would be a hell of a lot different right now. But we don't have that choice. What we have to put up with the choices that the Democratic Party makes for us. All of this primarying shit, honestly, it's just going through the motions at this point. Because they're going to pick who they want. They would rather vote or nominate a senile ex-vice president that can't even make his way through a quote of the Declaration of Independence. They'd rather nominate this guy. They'd rather nominate Corn Pop than give people health care. They'd rather nominate Joe Biden than even have the conversation about giving people health care, right? They would rather outwardly rig an entire debate process than even have the conversation about ending interventionist wars in the Middle East, right? They would rather silence the only woman of color left in the race, period, than to even have the conversation that Russiagate was a giant hoax meant to do nothing but create fear in the hearts of Americans. It was another Red Scare. And so many of these idiots fell for it. And I mean, look, Tulsi Gabbard was the one out in front talking about all this stuff, saying, hey, this isn't it. You know, there are so many other actual crimes and problems being committed right now. And you guys want to worry about something that didn't even fucking happen. Look, I'm telling you, if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, there is no reason for you to not be behind Tulsi Gabbard right now in this fight. She does nothing but serve. It does nothing to serve you well. If she's up on that debate stage, can you imagine a scenario where Joe Biden is up on a debate stage sandwiched between Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard? You know how quickly that man would get destroyed? It would be the end of his campaign. That night would be the end of his campaign. It would be over. There's the long and short. And you know that is exactly why the DNC cannot allow Tulsi Gabbard to get up there. Andrew Yang stated last night that somebody asked him what the new debate qualifications were going to be. And he said, whatever Tulsi Gabbard has +1. He was essentially right. He was essentially right because, you know, like I said, there was no reason to change the rules unless the only reason to change the rules was to keep her off the stage. I mean, look, this is what happens when you get silenced, when you get censored on a national scale. She wasn't able to ever run a fair campaign because her own party silenced her with the media's help. So many different pundits and panelists and so-called journalists, even so-called indie journalists like the, you know, TYT, pushing clearly debunked smears. And honestly, some pretty, you know, Hindu-phobic, bigoted shit. You know, excuse my language, but I don't really care about getting monetized. This isn't about the money. This is about me just telling you what I feel, and I'm feeling kind of pissed off about it. I mean, yeah, sure, I'm a Tulsi Gabbard supporter, but I'm also an American. I'm a voting American, and I want to make the best choice. I want other Americans to be informed and make the best choices, and that is impossible to do when the party is silencing their own candidates and not allowing them to run. Like, it doesn't make any sense, you know. So, look, people, this primary is rigged. It has been from the beginning. You can call me a Russian, call me a bot. I'm right here in front of you. Pull up. Like, it's not, you know, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, because to be honest with you, I'm never going to vote Democrat ever again after this. Like, it's over. Like, I'm going to tell you that. I'm making it my mission to expose anyone and everyone that takes that, you know, that wants to try this bullshit in the future it's over for you. Because I'm going to be there to expose you. MCSC Network's going to be there to expose you. Niko's going to be there. We're all going to be there. So, look, you guys just need to know what's going on. This is a soft coup made by the DNC. It's not just to keep Bernie Sanders from winning. It's to keep the ideas that Tulsi Gabbard is bringing to the table. It's to keep those ideas in a quiet little space, as suffocated as possible, because they don't want these ideas to go mainstream like Sanders' ideas did. But there's nothing they can do to stop it. In the end, we will win. It's just the fact that we have to keep fighting. And it's just a shame. It's a shame that we have to fight the way that we do, because it's hard enough to beat the Republicans in an election. It doesn't help when you have to run against your own party plus the Republicans at the same time. Look, I understand this is a primary, but it's never been a fair one. And that's the biggest problem that we all need to understand here. Like, this primary from the very get-go was set up by the DNC to go exactly the way that it's going now. And the only reason why we've even gotten as much information as to why or how they've rigged it is because it didn't go the way they planned it. So they actually had to play more cards than they thought they were going to in the beginning. Like, everybody just thought that Biden was going to jump in and that manufactured momentum was going to carry him all the way to the finish line. But it didn't, right? Because he can barely string a sentence together. And people saw that. Bernie Sanders is still very engaged, very coherent. And that's just not going to work for them. They're going to smear their own guy. Like, look, people, you can either stop Trump or you can stop Bernie. Democrats don't care about policy. They don't care about making life better for the people, not only in this country or the people around the globe that are impacted by our foreign policy that really, destroys lives around the world, right? Democrats don't care about any of that. All they care about is winning. And ironically, if they run Joe Biden, they're going to lose in a landslide. The only Democrat with a chance is Bernie Sanders. And honestly, Bernie Sanders, he needs to step up. He needs to speak out, and he needs to support Tulsi Gabbard the way that she supported him in 2016. Because what's happened to her over the course of this primary has been an absolute disgrace for everyone involved. That's just it. That's the long and short of it. Get mad. We need to get mad. We need to get angry about this stuff. I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, a bit of a rant here. So I'm going to try to close it out right now. Thank you guys for watching this episode of the Rob Report. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Rokfin at RobLittlefire. Again, I'm going to try to make more of these. I'm going to try to do it more often. But you guys keep protesting. Keep fighting the good fight. Don't lay down your arms at all. Keep going. Okay? We have a long way to go. And just because this is happening now, we can change the way that it happens in the future, but we have to make our voices heard. So, with that being said, thanks again for tuning in. And in the meantime, I'll keep doing what I do. You keep doing what you do. Take it easy.